Good. Good morning, everyone. I call to order this regular meeting of Council for Tuesday, June 4th, 2024. We've just entered into June, which is National Indigenous History Month. It's an opportunity to learn about unique cultures, traditions, history, and experiences of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis nations. We certainly encourage all residents take this time to deepen their understanding of Indigenous peoples and our collective past. And in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I acknowledge that we are gathered in the heart of Treaty 7 territory of southern Alberta. This land is home to the Blackfoot Confederacy, consisting of the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani First Nations, also the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and our most adjacent Indigenous neighbors, the Stoney Nakoda, comprised of Bearspaw, Goodstoney, and Chiniki First Nations. Further, we are located within the Rocky View Métis District within the Battle River Territory. The town of Canmore is committed to working to live in right relations and to advance truth and reconciliation as we acknowledge the many Indigenous peoples whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. I am grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. Looking to the agenda, are there any changes? Seeing none, I'll move approval of the agenda for Tuesday, June 4th, 2024, regular meeting of Council as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And we'll move to delegations. Dr. Cottle, you'd like to make an introduction.
Mayor Krauser, members of council, I'm pleased to introduce Jessica Cleric, who's the ED of the Homeless Society of the Bow Valley, who's your delegation this morning.
Great.
Over to you, Jessica.
Ms. Cleric, welcome to council.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm just going to make sure the presentation is up. Okay. Awesome. Good morning, everyone. It's so great to see you all again. Thank you for being here and for taking the time. Thank you as well for all of the support that you continue to provide as council. We sincerely appreciate it. I'm here today to provide a little bit of an update about the past operating season for HSBV, demonstrate the need for our program, as well as make a request to council. So this past winter marked the 4th consecutive year of operating our local low-barrier emergency winter shelter. Thanks to the generous support of our donors and our funders, this operating year was the longest to date. The shelter was located at Scout Hall and opened the morning of December 11th and closed the morning of April 1st. In addition to the emergency winter shelter, we also had our outreach program operating daily for the 2023-24 operating season, and it continues to run daily now. This is a phone and email service that folks can reach out to in seek of support. We monitor this daily up until 7 p.m., and all requests are answered within 24 hours. I'd also like to share, we were really excited to receive for the first time funding from the Government of Alberta's Ministry of Seniors, Social Services, Community and Social Services, my apologies, to support this past shelter season. We were really grateful for that support, and we are thrilled to announce that we will have the same funding agreement implemented for the next shelter season as well. Now moving into a little bit more specific updates about the program. So this past year, the outreach program provided 199 instances of support. We connected folks with dozens of local resources and supports. We provided 46 nights of emergency accommodations, as well as 7 emergency taxi rides through the outreach program. Now this slide here provides a little bit of insight into the emergency winter shelter setup itself. So as mentioned, this was located at Scout Hall. Check-in was scheduled each night from 9:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. with checkout scheduled at 9 a.m. the next morning. As mentioned, this was the longest operating season to date. We were open for 112 nights of operations, each of which was occupied. So we had a minimum of 1 guest each night. Importantly, the shelter was open for 5 nights with extreme cold weather and 11 nights with temperatures at or below -20 degrees Celsius. I will also note, prior to opening the emergency winter shelter, our team did consult the neighbors surrounding the Scout Hall space. We went around door to door providing letters, as well as engaged in conversation with the folks that were home and left our contact information. Now let's take a little look at the impact of the shelter program this year. So this year we provided support to 40 unique individuals within the shelter space. We had an average of 5.9 guests per night. We provided 640 bed nights, and we had 19 out of 112 nights where we reached or exceeded our nightly capacity of 8 beds. So our team has really referred to this last operating season as a year of unprecedented use, and this is quite evident when you take a look at the table on the left here in comparison to other operating years. So what I'll point out, this year we supported an average of 5.9 guests per night. In comparison, the year prior we had 2.3 guests per night. This year, 640 bed nights. Last year, 263 bed nights, and we supported 10 more unique individuals within the shelter space than the year prior. Now, I also wanted to provide some context into the approximate cost to operate the shelter program, and this is based on last year's financials. So what you will see is that the approximate cost per bed per night is $150. The pie chart on the right shows a bit of a breakdown of those costs, so you'll notice that 85% of costs are allocated towards program staff, 12% towards rent, and 3% towards cleaning and laundry. Now, I will note this is not comprehensive because we do have other supports that we provide in the shelter space that we seek additional grants or funding to provide. So, for example, this year we had a grant from the Bow Valley Food Bank in support, with support from Mountain Fire Foods. We provided a hot meals program, so everyone in the shelter space had access to a warm and nutritious meal each night. And we do we aim to pay our staff a wage as close to the recommended living wage as possible, funding contingent. And as always, we really prioritize our collaborations, and we value the feedback that we receive from our guests, making sure that that's centered within our program development to meet their needs. And so this year we hosted 3 voluntary guest feedback sessions. We had 5 folks attend each one. We had open conversation as well as some guided questions to get their perspectives on the shelter program. And I wanted to just share some of the key questions and some commonly heard answers. So one of the questions, if the shelter wasn't operating in the winter, where else might you stay? What we heard was sleeping rough outdoors, unsure, sleeping within a building vestibule, or couch surfing when possible. Another question asked, what suggestions do you have for the shelter program? What we heard was access to supports like storage, laundry, enhanced daytime support, a permanent shelter, as well as enhanced accessibility within the shelter space. So for instance, a ramp to get into the shelter space for those who may have limitations. Now, as a reminder, we do operate a low barrier shelter, so what that means is we have the minimum requirements necessary to access the space. This means our demographic data on our guests is limited to an optional demographic survey. So this year we had 10 guests complete the survey, and I wanted to point out a few interesting data points. So out of those survey respondents, 50% identified as being employed in the Bow Valley. 50% identified as living in the Bow Valley for 5 or more years, 40% identified as living in the Bow Valley for 1 to 5 years, and then 10% identified as living in the Bow Valley for less than 1 month. So overall, we did have a very busy year this year, lots of great successes and growth. We have wanted to share some future focus here. So we plan to continue our annual outreach and emergency winter shelter operations. For this coming winter, we are hoping and planning to open as early as November, so that'll be the earliest we've ever opened before, and that's based on our funding, our current funding. We've also submitted an application for charitable status in early 2024, so contingent on CRA review, we hope to have that in the near future. We also will continue focusing on our long-term sustainable funding planning. We need to have more sustainable, diverse funding in order to be able to work towards our longer-term goals and develop our programming based on need as opposed to what funding is actually available. And then, of course, continuing our exploration of a permanent long-term shelter space. Right now, the challenges that we face in terms of implementing a permanent long-term shelter is sustainable funding as well as space opportunities are quite limited. So each year the need for our programs is evident. We've had growing use of the programs as well as community awareness. The low barrier emergency winter shelter certainly fills a need within the Bow Valley and a gap within the local system of care. We provide those in the community who are unhoused and housing insecure with a warm and safe space to rest. And while we continue to explore longer term solutions, nothing to date has been confirmed. And so I would like to respectfully put forward a request to you, councillors. The first is that HSBV is requesting that council consider endorsement of access to Scout Hall for shelter operations between October 1st to May 1st of each year moving forward. And then contingent on the funding that we have, HSBV would operate the emergency shelter within that time frame. Now, this request will ultimately provide HSBV with the certainty and security of having a space to operate the program while we simultaneously look for longer-term solutions. The second request we have is that council consider extending in-kind hourly rent support from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. to 9 a.m. each night. So this is something that council has provided to us the past 2 years and we have been incredibly grateful for. Based on the 23-24 operating season, the rental fees to operate the shelter totaled $16,517 with a nightly fee of $140. In extending the in-kind rent support for this upcoming season, HSBV would save $100 per night or $15,100 for the full shelter season. And then what those savings would be put towards future program development. So ultimately, I do want to thank you all so much again for your support, for the collaborations, the in-kind support, the list goes on. It has not only been significant, but really critical to our organization. So I want to deeply thank you all, as well as thank all of our funders, donors, partners, and community for their support and collaborations. So I'll turn the floor back in case you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Ms. Cleric. Thank you for your presentation today. I will open it up to my colleagues to see if there are any questions. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. So capacity for the hall is 6, is that correct?
So it was initially 5. Last year we had a maximum of 6, and this year we increased it to 8. And so we went in and measured the distance between the mats, and that's the maximum for sure for that space.
And you're at 5.9 on average per night?
Per night, that's correct. But we had 19 nights where we were at or above 8 beds. So we would have either 8 folks in the space or more looking to access, and those who were looking to access above 8, we would have to refer out of the shelter.
Okay. One more, if I might.
Yeah.
Anybody coming to you who has been sleeping in their cars or vehicles overnight, are people coming from that demographic?
Yes, I would say yes. I would say I don't have a hard data point for you, but I can anecdotally say yes. We have had folks who would maybe traditionally sleep in their vehicle access the shelter space.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Faubert.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Ms. Clark, for your presentation. I was hoping you could maybe expand a bit on the conversations you've had with the neighbors in the neighborhood there. Specifically around, in the past, I believe it's been more of like a temporary year-by-year use. Have those conversations been around making this more of a year-to-year, like more permanent as you're requesting, and what has the feedback been?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we did our neighborhood engagement last season before the shelter had opened, we did not specifically mention using the space on a more longer-term basis until we find a permanent solution. We did talk about the shelter season, and no major concerns were brought to our attention. Again, we did provide the letter with our contact information, and no major concerns were noted.
Awesome.
But I'd be happy to do the consultation if helpful.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if in that process you had already started to perhaps have, because it's a little bit of a different conversation for that neighborhood, I believe. So, but I think that This is a really excellent program, and I thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Ms. Cleric. Question for you. Are you finding that there are repeat users year over year? Yeah, and what would that proportion be if you had to guess? I know there's not like hard data points, but I'm just trying to understand because there's probably some systemic stuff here.
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly there are, anecdotally, there are folks that use the space who have been there in previous years. This year, from what I've heard in staff conversations and just kind of analyzing the data that we do have, there were a lot of folks who were who hadn't accessed the space before. So if I had to give a rough estimate, maybe 20 to 30% of folks are repeat from previous years.
Yeah, they bank on it when the season changes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
So that's, you said there was 40 unique individuals?
I would say
that's 8 to 12.
Yes, that sounds
People-
about right. 8 to 12 are probably folks that we would have seen in previous seasons, and then other folks are, maybe we would have seen them in years prior, but have not seen recently.
Right, okay. Thank you. Great, thank you. Any other questions? Just making sure at home, Councillor Hillstad doesn't have a question. Okay, so Ms. Clerk, thank you very much for your presentation.
Absolutely.
Our usual practice as per our procedural bylaw is that when we get requests like this, unless there's an extraordinary reason that we have to deal with it immediately, which is not the case right here, we will respond to your request or deal with your request at our next regular council meeting, which will be the first meeting in July then.
Awesome. Sounds
Great.
great. Okay.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much,
Have a good
everyone.
day.
Take care.
All right, moving to Section D, approval of the minutes. We have two minutes. All right. 2 minutes to approve here. First one is the minutes of April 23rd. Are there any errors or omissions for that set of minutes? Okay, seeing none, I'll move approval of the minutes of April 23rd, 2024, special meeting of council as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Now the same question for May 7th. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll move that that we approve the minutes of May 7th, 2024 regular meeting of council as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. All right, we'll move on to item G1, Land Use Bylaw Amendment 2024-05, political campaign signs. Ms. Miller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Ms. Miller, the Manager of Protective Services, and I have Ms. Drost in the back there if there's any questions from planning. So just a little history. Council did direct administration to prepare a bylaw that restricts political campaign signs to private property and make an amendment to the town's land use bylaw to remove the political campaign sign section. So we've included both the proposed bylaw restricting the placement of political campaign signs on public property and the accompanying amendment to remove political campaign signs from the bylaw in the agenda package. As a public hearing will be needed to be held for the land use bylaw amendment, and that amendment's fairly straightforward, just taking out that one section on political campaign signs. Administration is proposing that the political campaign sign bylaw have feedback provided today in order to make adjustments in advance of the public hearing date, and then that all 3 readings of the political campaign sign bylaw occur after the public hearing, which administration is recommending to be held on July 2nd. So the recommendations in the staff report are included there, that council give first reading to the land use bylaw amendment 2024-05 political campaign signs, and that council schedule a public hearing for the land use bylaw amendment 2024-05 political campaign signs on July 2nd, 2024.
Great, thank you very much. Looking to members of council to see if they have any questions. And I do want to reiterate what Ms. Miller just said, that this is an opportunity to provide feedback on the political campaign signed bylaw 2024-06, because it's really just provided to us today for information. It is not being tabled for a reading. So that means that based on feedback received, there could be some tweaks made to it before it comes back to us at the next council meeting. So, with that preface, are there any questions of Ms. Miller? Councillor Graham.
Thank you. Originally in my mind, I had this thought that we would do this only at election time, but I didn't see any date or timestamps in this at all. So this would apply year-round, 365 days a year. Is that correct?
That's what's currently written in the bylaw. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. Miller and Mr. Roast. This is a technical question that someone brought up to me, and it was like last election time, there was someone that had a big truck, and they had like their sign, you know, driving around town, they would park it on the street. How does that get captured moving forward with this stuff? Or does it get caught in a different part of the bylaw?
So in the bylaw, public place is defined as any land owned or leased by the municipality other than a highway that the public is ordinarily entitled or permitted to use, and includes parks, parking lots, and land developed and used or managed by the town for public utilities. Because political campaign signs, we're saying that they are allowed to be placed on private property, but we still don't allow mobile signs.
Do not.
No.
Okay, so that was a
And if we need to
contravention last
include
time.
something in the bylaw to make that clear, we can do that.
So if I may,
Yeah.
and Mr. Roast could perhaps confirm, I think there's actually two answers to the question. One is that it would define as a political campaign sign that's obviously on a highway, which would be not allowed here, but I think probably the land use bylaw prohibits signs of that nature. Is that correct?
So mobile signs are prohibited within the land use bylaws, so any of those sorts of sign wouldn't be allowed anyways in town.
Right, right. So either way,
Perfect.
should not happen.
Exactly.
Great, thank you to you both.
Thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
people are just curious because they saw it last year or last election, like, what's this doing? It's here, it's here, it's here. So that's great to know. Thank you.
Councillor Graham?
Thank you. Sorry, I had one more. Fines, are the $250 on a per sign basis, or on a, you can have 100 signs and it's only $250? And same thing with the storage, we're charging $50 per sign?
Having it written this way with per sign gives us a little bit of flexibility and to use discretion. So the way it's written is per sign. It could be per occurrence if we wanted to change it, but that would still give discretion as to per sign. So if someone flagrantly kept doing it again and again, you could go back. It doesn't matter if it's the same sign or not, but it's a good question. We usually use discretion, like if we see multiple offenses at the same time. Like if somebody had multiple bird feeders up, for example, we wouldn't necessarily ticket for each bird feeder. It would, right?
Okay, so there's some discretion there. And,
Yeah,
okay.
At least in the first instance.
in the first instance,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Okay, Councillor Faubert?
Through the nomination process, we would have the information to contact candidates should a sign be found to be not in the right place, and offer communication with them if they're not understanding the rules. Is that, do you feel that's encompassed in here as well?
Yeah, we always take that education approach first when we're doing enforcement. So there would be, like, we would use our discretion and make sure that we talk to the candidate, that they understood the information that they had received from the returning officer, because we would work with the clerk's officer, or clerk's office, sorry, and returning officer to make sure that all the candidates had this information ahead of time and were understanding of the bylaw. And then we would double check to make sure that they were understanding, give them the opportunity to rectify it, and then proceed with fines if it continued.
Yeah. I just wouldn't want to see a situation where someone didn't know that they had a sign impounded and that they were accumulating a cost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
One of the things that we're likely to see during a campaign, and I know that we've seen this before with, I know in the federal election, perhaps in the provincial election as well, but signs that are of a larger size that seem to be on public property, but it's not owned or leased by the municipality. Such it's just it's provincial land.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's still allowed because we don't have the authority to rule in that regard.
That's
correct?
right.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Hillstead, your hand is blending very much into the background.
Yes, I see that. This is back to Councillor Mall's question with the mobile signs. So would that include, like, what if someone decides to go crazy and wraps their vehicle with their name and stuff on it? Is that considered a mobile sign if it's a vehicle wrap, or if they get the magnetic side things? I've seen some people that they have a business and they'll slap it on their truck when they're driving around for their business, but they'll pull it off when they're driving around personally. How does, on the technical side, how does that exactly work?
Yeah, so we would still be considering that a mobile sign if it is wrapped or if it's magnetic or any of that sort.
Perfect, thanks.
Duly noted. I have to say, I had a magnetic sign on the side of my car. Okay, so those are not allowed. All right. Duly noted. Any other questions? Oh,
It's
Councillor
not doing the
Faubert.
green thing.
Yep, that's fine.
I messed up the buttons.
No, it's just you were the last one, and so it doesn't go over until I push it over. See, no problem.
So part of my last campaign was rocks that were painted. Would that be considered a sign? It's arts and crafts, so I used my campaign colors, wrote my name, had my on it, and then hodgepodge. It's I think called hodgepodge. You seal it, and then you people put them in places where in their own properties, which was okay, but in public places
Dr.
as
Cottle?
well.
First of all, very creative. Love the arts and crafts nature of signage. I mean, I think we're in a bit of a rabbit hole. And council can spend a lot of time trying to control all the iterations of ways people might be creative. My understanding was that this was really about traditional signs with the A-frames and the, and that's what the bylaw is written towards. If you want us to go into all the creative, I would recommend against trying to write policy or a bylaw that goes against all the ways people are creative. The spirit and intent behind this was the clutter of political signs, and that's really where administration has focused. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that, and there is a lot underneath the land use bylaw. Like, okay, so I learned about the sign that was on my car. A beautiful rock, if not a sign, it could be beautiful litter, or it could be graffiti.
Art.
Yeah, no, art, but it's still something that somebody's created and they're leaving lying around on public property, So if a crumpled piece of paper was art, then it could be the same thing. What I'm saying is that I agree. There's lots of ways that people could try to get around it, but there's also rules that we have to live by that are just everyday rules too, right? Okay.
And to Dr. Cottle for reminding, the reminder about the intent of where the motion came from. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah. Thank you. And Ms. Miller.
Well, it's also a little bit of leeway too, as we're talking about a bylaw that is before us. If it happened to, we need to sometimes at least glance down rabbit holes to determine if there's some gaps in the bylaw. So, yeah, rock on. All right, so looking to see if there are any other questions. All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Miller and Ms. Drost, for your report. I will now move. So now, just to be perfectly clear, we are not making any motion today with regards to the political campaign sign bylaw. We first have to deal with the land use bylaw amendment and set a public hearing. So I will first move that council give first reading to Land Use Bylaw Amendment 2024-05, political campaign signs. Would anybody like to speak to that motion? Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. Happy to see this come forward today. And I appreciate all the questions. I think everybody wants to make sure that they're coloring inside the lines, and I appreciate that attention. But as Dr. Cottle articulated, this is really the spirit and intent is about the clutter of signage and the expense. And in a couple weeks, we're going to have a report come to us with regards to, maybe not in a couple weeks, maybe it's the fall. Soon will we get a report based on council remuneration. And this is just another way of sort of leveling the playing field financially for potential candidates and making things a bit more grassroots. So I would also point out that I've always found, I've made my signage errors in the day and hammered them in a spot where I shouldn't have hammered them in, and have always found, because it was an accident, I've always found bylaw to be quite understanding or municipal enforcement to be quite understanding and helpful, and they're not punitive. So I think, people make an honest mistake. None of us are expert campaigners the first time we run, and so I think that as long as your heart's in the right place, you shouldn't be too stressed out about it. Anyways, I'd be happy.
I think that's very wise words, and,
Yep.
and we all do learn. And of course, this is for all levels of elections.
Yeah.
And there's a learning curve for all. I certainly had learned that you don't put them in front of the courthouse. Bylaw doesn't approach you then. You find them in the dumpster behind the courthouse. The other thing that I hope to see happen is less fishing of signs out of wooded areas and river, and that where people will take them and chuck them. And that's not fun, because I know also that candidates don't want to be involved in that activity, but they also don't want to have their name littering in for time to come in the trees or in the river, and so they make efforts to go get them, and so hopefully this will avoid that as well. Councillor Faubert.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Krausert. I will support first reading to go to public hearing and hear from the public, but I still believe that the compromise to allow election signs in certain limited and specific strategic public locations is where I would prefer to go forward from and I would argue that that type of alternative would address the clutter, the environmental stewardship, but it would also create a little bit more equity and accessibility for all types of people to a bit of the public realm to put a sign out for them and their name out in the public, because perhaps door knocking isn't available to them. I'm thinking of specifically people with mobility issues. Not all public spaces are open to or easy to access. I'm also, after COVID, thinking of people who perhaps are immunocompromised and might see door knocking as too risky. And so I still prefer that as the alternative, but I do support first reading and going to public hearing. So thank you for listening to me just have that little bit there.
So thank you, Councillor. So just for clarity, this particular motion is with regards to changes to the land use bylaw, which is just to remove some sections. If you would like to see a change to the campaign sign bylaw, you'd have to do that by amending motion when it comes before us, because we already did provide direction to administration to remove that, so that you would do that at that time. Okay? And we could then debate that at that time. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak to the first reading of the land use bylaw amendment? Councillor Graham. Okay. Okay. All right. Seeing no others wishing to speak, I'll call a question on the motion on the floor. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And I'll now move that council schedule a public hearing for Land Use Bylaw Amendment 2024-05 political campaign signs on July 2nd, 2024. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to item G2, Fireworks Ban and Fire Bylaw Amendment 2024-11, Community Safety. Ms. Miller, this is you as well. I know that there's a number of hands both in the previous one and this one, so I wasn't sure who was going to present. So
Yeah, well, I'll start us off. So again, hello, I'm Caitlin Miller, Manager of Protective Services. I'm here with Ms. Jeannie McPherson, Supervisor of Arts and Culture, to discuss fireworks with you. I'll be discussing administration's recommendations for bylaw amendments and fill you in on education and enforcement activities. Ms. McPherson will be detailing some alternatives to fireworks. We also have Chief Gaylor, Ms. McLett, Mr. Burt, and Ms. Van Gaal here to answer any questions as required. Yeah, got a full team
it's a
today.
team effort.
I brought all of my friends. Yeah, every friend I had. So just the history on this one. In June of 2023, Council passed the fireworks ban bylaw, which banned the ignition of fireworks in Canmore. This bylaw exempts the town of Canmore from igniting fireworks for town events for July 1st, December 31st, and January 1st, so essentially Canada Day and New Year's Eve. Earlier this year, the topic of fireworks arose again at Council with direction for administration to report back on the following: potential alternatives to having fireworks on Canada Day and New Year's Eve that do not pose a wildfire risk and have less potential impact on wildlife, pets, and people, including the estimated costs. Advice on increasing the fines is set out in the fireworks ban bylaw 2023-23 from $5,000 per occurrence to $10,000 per occurrence, and some options for enhancing awareness and municipal enforcement with respect to illegal fireworks, including the estimated costs. So to kick things off, I'll just pass it right over to Ms. McPherson to discuss some alternative experiences for these celebrations.
Thank you. Ms. McPherson, welcome to council.
This one didn't get our slides in. Hang on, 2 seconds.
Sure.
Of
Yep.
Thank you.
technical. Just to keep you in suspense. Got it. No problem.
Oh, great, it's got the notes. Fantastic. Mayor Krauser, members of council, I'm Jeannie McPherson, the Supervisor of Arts and Culture here with the administrative team, and I'm delighted and a bit nervous to be here today to present on some alternatives to fireworks.
This is your first presentation to council, right?
It is, yes, it's
Well,
the first
well, welcome.
one.
We don't.
Thank you.
We don't.
Thank you.
We don't bite. We tend to be a very collegial bunch, and so please don't be too nervous. Just tell us what you got.
Thank you, appreciate that. So alternatives to fireworks, you can see there is a question mark after the alternatives because administration found that, in fact, there are no true alternatives to fireworks. They have been part of the cultural and community fabric, the tradition of celebration in Canmore since the late 1990s. They bring people from all across Canmore together to celebrate moments of occasion, events, and celebrations. So, and it's not really unique to Canmore. Historians believe that fireworks were originally developed in 2nd century BC. So we think about culture as encompassing arts, lifestyle, human rights, value systems, traditions, and beliefs. Fireworks are definitely part of that, and that's across the globe, I'd say. So administration has researched the following alternatives to fireworks because human species is very adaptive, especially when it comes to the good of the whole and needing to look at new alternatives. So since the first ever drone presentation was offered at Ars Electronica, which is a new media festival of art in 2012, alternatives to fireworks have been growing, and looking at different options has been more and more common. So drone shows, laser shows, and new innovative cultural programming are all new growing areas as alternatives to fireworks. Administration has researched alternatives such as increased cultural programming elements, drone show, and laser show. I'll tell you about those today. Those alternatives do not have the same negative community impacts associated with fireworks, such as noise, wildlife, fire risk. But unlike fireworks, they are unlike fireworks in that they cannot be viewed across the entire community. So production timelines also for these alternatives range from 6 to 12 months, so they are not viable options for Canada Day or New Year's Eve 2024. So preliminary cost estimates and alternatives are as follows. Drone shows. So drone shows. So synchronized drones can inform intricate patterns and design in the night sky, and they can offer a modern and innovative alternative to fireworks. While they are a viable summer option, administration does not recommend pursuing a drone show for New Year's Eve. While in warm temperatures, drones can fly for up to 18 minutes. In temperatures between +5 and -10, they can only fly for about 10 minutes, and wind is also a factor. So while some variation exists between drone models, a drone show might need to be postponed if wind speeds are greater than 25 kilometers an hour. So that's kind of like your gentle breeze, medium breeze kind of a wind level. But drone shows have been used in different cultural celebrations across the globe. There was, as mentioned, first in Ars Electronica in 2012, but then in Germany in 2016, there was a 150 drone display. They were used for the South Asian Games in Nepal in 2020 with 500 drones. And more recently in 2023, 864 drones were used at Coachella in California. So these are used in discussions with service providers. Start my timer there. Service providers, they recommended 90 drone shows would be minimum for a show in Canmore at a cost of $18,000 estimate. So lasers are also an alternative to fireworks. So few laser light companies exist in Canada, and there's fewer still who have experience and ability to produce outdoor laser shows. But administration has contacted a laser show provider who has provided some advice about the execution of outdoor laser shows. They often require complex coordination with aviation industry partners, and so do drone shows, but those production companies work pretty well with Transport Canada or with those aviation organizations. So administration would recommend pre-production planning so that that would result in the best production result is to have those experts come and scout locations, especially with mountains and different, projection kind of surfaces, if we think about them that way, can lead to some real creativity. And so there's a possibility to project lasers on a building or a large screen or a large screen that drops from a building, or sort of project those lasers and they bounce off a building and they can be directed to a screen. There's also a possibility to have lasers sort of transpire by hitting the mountains, which is unique to this environment. So the estimate cost for laser production is for a 20 to 30 minute show would be in range of $30,000. And so those two options are similar to fireworks in that they appear in the night sky. And nothing can really replace bringing in the night sky or the New Year with fireworks or sky-wide alternatives. But the following ideas I'll share really offer opportunity and innovation to redefine how we would celebrate Canada Day or New Year's or as alternatives to fireworks. So we'll look at lantern performance art, interior art, or performative experiences with projection art. So lantern performance art is really where it can be a combination of things, but they would have in common is that there's illuminated canvas puppets that are animated and brought to life by theatrical performers. Theater artists, performance artists, puppeteers, mask makers work together, often with sound and story, to illuminate dimly lit either indoor or exterior environments. And often this can be combined with storytelling, or it can kind of stand on its own. So early estimate of cost for lantern performance art, again, could be interior or exterior, is around $10,000. Next, administration looked at various curated light art and performance experiences. So by that, I mean a combination of smaller scale interior is key for this one, interactive art and light experiences. So we might have some elements of lantern performance art, some elements of puppetry, but also combine those with some interactive artworks. So where we have different lights and highlights and shadows that respond to audience movement, and they are within a controlled indoor environment. So we would think about in the image there, you can see a woman right behind her on the wall. There's actually a button, you can't see it in the photo, that she would press to see the image in front of her change in relation to how she turns the dial on the wall. It may also react in response to her body movements and change. It's a technology called flocking, and that's also used for the image below, which is an interior projection mapping. So that could be a static projection mapping. By that I mean it would be designed ahead of time and kind of always have the same experience, or it could be an interactive projection mapping where it changes in response to human movement. So if you move forward, the design might kind of respond to how you're moving. And that estimated cost is at $10,000 to $15,000 for that interior performance experiences and projection mapping. Outdoor projection mapping is projection mapping is a technique used to turn objects, often irregularly shaped, into display surfaces for video projection. So objects could be complex as industrial landscapes such as buildings, but also it's possible to do some projection mapping with screens in mountains. So outdoor projection mapping estimate cost is between $15,000 and $20,000 at a high level, and could look like animating a building in Canmore. So as a quick recap, administration is not recommending the use of drones for New Year's Eve due to their unpredictable performance in winter conditions. And should council decide to pursue alternatives to fireworks, administration will bring forward forecasts as part of the budget planning process. And as a reminder, a multi-year contract is in place with the fireworks provider for New Year's Eve celebrations until January 2nd, 2027. The contract can be terminated with no penalty if a minimum of 30 days written notice is provided. And if the recommended bylaw amendments are approved, a fireworks display would not occur on New Year's Eve 2024, resulting in a $10,000 savings in the arts and culture operating budget. So this concludes presentation on alternatives to fireworks. I'll invite Ms. McClett up to help me with the motion.
Great job,
Ms.
Jeannie.
Ms. McClett, yeah, very well done. Ms. McClett, welcome to council.
Thank you, Mayor Cressert and members of council. Two things. The financial cost of these is in addition to the existing budget for fireworks. So just wanted to flag that for council, that the cost to create some of these alternatives does have additional budget requirements attached to them. And because of the 6 to 12 months lead time for some of these requirements in the booking, we need some time and space to do so for the team to look at that. Should council want to move forward with some of these alternatives and update the budget, then there is a motion drafted that gives you some choice options that would give administration some direction to come back as part of the regular budgeting process during Finance Committee for the 2025-2026 budget to bring those forward and give us some direction in that space. So there's a draft there for you to consider. I won't read it to you, but that's what we need from council in order to make future decisions in the team.
Great. Thank you very much. Ms. Miller, anything else?
Yeah, I'm back. So council has already done a very good job of discussing why we have a fireworks ban bylaw in place. But currently the fireworks ban bylaw disallows the use of fireworks by members of the public while allowing the town of Canmore to ignite fireworks on Canada Day and New Year's Eve. Fireworks are also mentioned in the fire bylaw. So administration is taking this opportunity to recommend the following amendments to the fireworks ban and the fire bylaw to increase clarity and consistency. So with a few proposed bylaw amendments, and the first is the recommendation to amend the fireworks ban bylaw to prohibit the use of fireworks within the municipality with no exemptions for the town of Canmore. This amendment would further demonstrate the town of Canmore's commitment to human-wildlife coexistence and public safety while establishing a consistent expectation for the municipality and other individuals or organizations who may wish to use low-impact fireworks with appropriate safety measures in place. Next, administration recommends that Section 4 be struck from the fire bylaw and move 4.1 to the fireworks ban bylaw. This puts all regulations around fireworks into one bylaw. The current fine amount in the fireworks ban bylaw is set at $5,000 to discourage the use of fireworks within the municipality. Given that the smaller rogue fireworks are often set off by individuals or small groups, the $5,000 fine amount is a practical deterrent. A higher fine amount of $10,000 may be more appropriate for businesses, corporations, or other entities with more monetary resources that contravene the fireworks ban bylaw by having a large or planned fireworks show. But administration believes that these activities will cease through direct messaging and education. Administration also considered that the fine for violating a fire ban is only $2,000, which is $3,000 less than the fine amount for violating the fireworks ban bylaw. Compared to igniting fireworks, violating a fire ban poses as much, if not more, wildfire risk to the community. So to support the argument that violating the fireworks ban bylaw should result in a larger fine amount due to public safety risk, administration recommends that the fine amount remain at $5,000 instead of increasing to $10,000, as there is already a large disparity between the two. Instead of increasing the fireworks ban fine amount, council could instead choose to increase the fine amount for violating a fire ban in the fire bylaw from $2,000 to match the fine for violating the fireworks ban bylaw to $5,000. This would match both of the fines for activities that increase the risk of a wildfire starting within the community. The Protective Services, Fire Rescue, and Municipal Enforcement Departments are working with the Communications Department to include public safety messaging around fireworks, including how it may increase risk of wildfire, how it impacts wildlife and pets, and we will directly contact businesses within the community who may have allowed fireworks to be set off from their properties in the past to inform them of the bylaw and fines. We will continue to assess these activities and adjust as needed. To support enforcement of the fireworks ban bylaw, the Municipal Enforcement Department will be scheduling community peace officers until 1 a.m. on Canada Day. They will be patrolling areas where fireworks have anecdotally been ignited in the past, and will be looking to educate and prevent the use of fireworks on this date, as well as enforce the fireworks ban bylaw if required. To help ensure timely and effective follow-up on bylaw infractions on an ongoing basis, the Municipal Enforcement Department has also established a process for when other agencies respond to bylaw infractions called Passover reports. So we have a well-established process with the RCMP, and we've recently included Alberta Fish and Wildlife and now Canmore Fire Rescue Departments so that they can complete a Passover report when they respond to a bylaw infraction. Then gets submitted to the Municipal Enforcement Department for follow-up and potential enforcement action. Any time of the year, residents may also submit reports of fireworks being deployed either to the RCMP non-emergency line or to the Municipal Enforcement Department. So there are some alternatives. Council could choose to amend the fireworks ban bylaw to allow the ignition of fireworks on New Year's Eve only. This is not recommended by administration because while wildfire risk is typically low during the winter months, wildfire season has been increasingly expanding and has been declared as a year-round risk in neighboring provinces. Additionally, continuing to allow fireworks on New Year's Eve would result in continued impacts on wildlife. Ms. McPherson has already spoken to the financial impacts regarding the contract for fireworks delivery, and all operational expenses will be absorbed in approved operating budgets in municipal enforcement and communications. So the recommendations are that all three readings of the bylaw are recommended today, as Canada Day is coming up, and the proposed amendments help clarify and add consistency in supporting community safety through these bylaws.
Great. Thank you very much to all of you for your presentation and all the hands that went into preparing this report and reporting back to council on the motion that was passed earlier this year. Looking to council to see if there are any questions. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure who to ask. When we did our low-level fireworks last, did we measure the decibels of that? Low noise, rather, fireworks?
No, we did not measure the decibels of the low-level impact, but they are on average between like high-level or regular fireworks are between 175 decibels, and low-level are more so between in that 150 decibel range.
It was like 70 to 90, actually, is what I've been researching and what I understand from my training.
Correct, sorry. We changed to low impact fire.
Yes,
fireworks.
low level, low impact, low noise, they've got a few terms.
Low impact fire, and it's less garbage, less bang. Probably about 5 to 6 years ago, the decibels are around 70 to 90 for those, and for regular fireworks that predated that, they're between 150, 170.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we don't measure them normally, but that's just
sometimes
the
people
Googles.
do geeky things. You never know, right? Out of interest, I do some geeky things, that's for sure. Like blow up fireworks in my previous life. So I guess I'm curious, are we looking at, as a council, from a noise perspective, I guess I just want to articulate, I have no issue from a fire perspective in the summer. I think that that actually makes sense. I push back a little bit on the winter conversation with regards to fireworks in winter, and I would like to talk specifically to low noise fireworks, because I think that they definitely have a place. But, and I think the fines are great.
So do you have a question for now?
Yeah, no, so my question was, is there, are there any rules around weed whippers and leaf blowers, and which are much higher in decibel level than 70 to 90 in terms of noise and length of term of use?
Yeah, the community standards bylaw does have restrictions on how long garden tools of that nature can be used for, or power tools, and it's up to 3 hours a day.
so up to 3 hours a day. And our standard fireworks, low-level fireworks show is about 10 minutes.
So just a question on that, though. Do we have any sense of the range of that sound? Because a leaf blower probably can't be heard outside of your neighborhood, whereas the fireworks could be heard throughout the valley.
It is fairly localized when we do receive complaints. I don't know what the decibel readings are on those offhand, but when we receive complaints about garden tools, weed whippers, or leaf blowers, it's generally due to excessive use, and it's prolonged excessive use.
Live music, folk festival, 110 decibels is the standard for that, which is far above what low-level fireworks or low-noise fireworks tend to emit. I guess I just wanted to point that out, because I actually have a problem with banning, I actually have a problem with us closing, sorry, yeah,
I just want to
sorry, that's
separate
the end of my
debate. Yeah, definitely bring that up during debate.
I realized that once I started going down the road that I needed to retract.
Okay.
I guess I just wanted to know if we had any other plans to ban any other things. And if we were doing it based on noise, we might want to think a little harder.
Okay,
That's all.
so that's another debate point. Councillor Faubert, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor Krausert, and thank you, everyone, for your presentations. With respect to enforcement, Ms. Miller, on Canada Day, could you maybe speak a bit to, you talked a bit about the communication afterwards in the reports, but on that evening, if someone picks up the phone and reports fireworks, who does it go to?
Oh, they can call municipal enforcement. We'll have the staff on. They just might need to leave a voicemail, because it's really hard for the municipal enforcement staff or the peace officers to be answering the phone while they're out in the community patrolling. They might be talking to someone, but they regularly check the voicemail. So they are, if we give out the municipal enforcement number, we encourage people to call and report on Canada Day until 1 a.m. Afterwards, they can call the non-emergency RCMP line.
And then if someone, so it wouldn't necessarily be a 911 situation, would it?
No.
No.
Unless there's a fire that has started, then please call 911. I will give that caveat. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so then if I understand it right, then if other agencies come across the fireworks, it will be followed up on through the process.
Mm-hmm.
But on the night of Canada Day, are the agencies talking to each other?
Yes.
To say, like, on the radio, like,
Yes.
fireworks? Sorry.
Maybe not on the radio, but we will be connected with the
Okay.
other agencies, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I like that. I like that.
And then I have another question.
Yeah, go for it.
The drones were considered a viable option for Canada Day, but I don't see it as sort of being recommended here in the report. Is there a reason? And I fully understand that it might be that you want council to give that direction because there is a price tag to it, or it might be a low light issue.
So currently, there's no budget in 2024 for any fireworks or alternatives for Canada Day. So should council want to see drones, then that needs to be a recommendation for the 2025-2026 budget process.
So just on that topic then, though, drones are quite noisy too. Like
Can be, yes.
I've heard if you get large numbers of them, at least
Correct.
with today's technology,
Yeah.
very, very loud. Okay, yeah.
Correct. They're not without noise.
Yeah.
Nothing comes without noise, but
So then would I better understand that the lantern performance, interior curated lights, and outdoor projected mapping are a far better fit for consideration?
it's alternative cultural programming. As noted, none of them are an alternative to fireworks because they can't be enjoyed in the same way and take longer lead time and longer work in order to bring forward. But it is a more accessible and diverse cultural experience that is being brought forward for council consideration.
I think, yeah, they're great options. right? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know who this one's to quite yet, but if I could just get some clarification on cost. So a single event, fireworks, is 10,000. Drones would be,
So we have 2 drone shows that take place. One is for firework shows that take place on New Year's Eve, one at 8 o'clock for children and one at midnight. Combined, they are just under $10,000.
okay. The lantern performance, interior light show, et cetera, they say an additional 8 to 20,000. Is that above the $10,000 that we're talking about there? So they would be, okay. And the drone show was 18,000, and the laser light show was 20 to 30, if I remember. Laser light show, 20 to 30.
And recognition that some of those, once curated on behalf of the town, the cost for some of, like a laser light show, could go down in future years, but in order to develop the programming and the design for that event, so unless you change the shows, if I'm saying that correct?
Yeah, correct. And also, the site visit would not need to occur every year. It would be in preparation of the first production of a drone show or laser show, is to have those experts come here.
So this is a little bit of a la carte. So if council wanted a drone show and a lantern show and a whatever, we could allocate all of that budget. Is that correct?
At that point, we would be looking at staff capacity to deliver on all 3.
Right,
But yes.
right, of course. Okay. And when we talk about and mapping the images onto something, so if we wanted to take Holling, for example, and put a show up there, that's a possibility?
Yeah, that would be the nature of the conversations with the production company. You know, some initial conversations and experience has indicated that yes, it's possible to either mount a screen within the mountains for a projection mapped show, or to have lasers that transpire because of the mountain's face. So that would be the kinds of conversations we would entertain with production companies.
Interesting.
Dr. Cottle, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, just and the province. That's not in the town of Canmore. And so
Right.
if we're going to start to do that kind of thing, we're bringing in other levels of government. Like there's the technical that we can do, but there's also multi-agencies.
Right.
So there's just a layer of complexity there that could increase significant staff time and cost.
Thank you.
As a heads up.
I have one more, if I may.
Go ahead.
When we introduced low noise, what do we call those fireworks?
Low impact.
Low impact? When we introduced that brand of fireworks, did our number of incidents of lost dogs or noise complaints or that sort of thing go down?
We all looked back at Mr. Burt, who's been here longer than all of us, and the answer is we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Is what I'm gathering from him.
Okay. In any given year, how many complaints do we get? How many missing dogs do we get in a New Year's Eve evening?
We would have to go back and look. I know for sure there were 2 this past year that were reported to us. That's
Okay.
as much as I know.
Thank you very much.
Looking to council to see if there are any other questions. Seeing none? Okay, I'm going to move that council give first reading to fireworks ban and fire bylaw amendment 2024-11 community safety. And I'm going to propose an amending motion. I am going to propose the motion with respect to increasing the penalty for failing to comply with a fire ban to $5,000 from its current $2,000. I'm using the wording that is provided in the staff report. And so the amending motion I'm moving is that council add the following as Section 8 to Bylaw 2024-11 and renumber the subsequent sections as required. And what's being added then would be 8. Schedule A, Section 6.3, failed to comply with a fire ban is amended by striking out the minimum penalty of $2,000 and substituting $5,000. I think it's an excellent point that failure to comply with a fire ban is at minimum the same risk, but more likely a higher risk of a problem, and there should be the same penalty. We live in an area that would be considered a higher risk given the nature of our surroundings, the length of time since the last wildfire, and that it is our number one threat to our community is wildfire risk. And so we really have to emphasize with whatever tools are available to us, and this is the tool available to us, of how important it is to not engage in any activity that threatens the lives of your neighbors and visitors, as well as property. And this is not something we can take lightly at all. And so I'd encourage your support of this amending motion. Would anybody like to speak to the amending motion? Councillor McCallum.
I'd be happy to support this, Your Worship. I think that this is an important amendment, and I feel that even last year we saw some incidences of fireworks going off. Well, and actually that was up in the mountains, so that's actually not on town of Canmore property, but it was concerning, and so I'll be happy to support this.
Thank you. Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in alignment with you on this one. I'm happy to support. From the safety side of things, this is serious. And from a property side, I think Canmore got assessed at, what, $12 billion this last year. I think it's worth something. So thank you.
And Councillor Hillstead, if I happen to miss your hand being up because it's a very small image, go ahead and speak up if I start to move along. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to the amending motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, so now we have the first reading as amended. Before speaking to the motion, I'm just wondering if there are any other amending motions. Councillor Forbear, did you have an amending motion that you wanted to put forward? I mean, you don't have to. You could speak to it as well. I'm just trying to be efficient there.
Kinda.
Okay.
Well, so it's the alternative that's provided, that Section 3 is amended by striking out or July 1st each year,
Yep.
and leaving New Year's Eve in as being an allowable circumstance for low-impact fireworks from the town of Canmore. But I think it's worth just starting the discussion off. I don't know if it's worth going to debate of an actual motion yet, because I'm not sure where everyone else is. But I just wanted to start with, there's a couple things that I'm really thinking about right now. And one is that the drone show option and the laser light options are considerable changes and significant investments to provide sort of a similar level of experience or cultural celebration that I think that fireworks provides. I think that not having them on Canada Day, I support that, and I think that it would, like for fireworks, I think it would be great to have an alternative. But we've already, through COVID, kind of gotten used to the fireworks at Canada Day not being a thing anymore. I think fireworks for New Year's Eve is more important socially and culturally in terms of for in terms of community building, with a celebration of light and brightness and joyfulness. And I think that we can replicate that in other ways, but we might not be there yet. And I still think that we need to do something this year. So I'm not in support of getting rid of low-impact fireworks for New Year's Eve at this time. But I do support doing something in the future that's different and going through the budget process. And this would be the last year, and everyone would know that, and then maybe or we start transitioning this year with that programming, because we do have 6 months from now until New Year's. And because the lantern stuff has been, I think, really amazing to any of the experiences I've gone to in Banff. And I think that some sort of alternate's possible in the short term, but that doesn't lead to a motion. That just takes me down a bit of a rabbit hole.
At least not yet. At least not yet. I think it's a good point. It's open for you or someone to bring that motion, but it's also valuable to hear where people are standing and as we have the discussion. So anything else you'd like to add at this time?
I think it would be worthwhile also exploring the potential of the drones and the laser shows further, especially given that there may even, I think that could also be in an alternative motion that could lead to a something in the budget, but it would take a while. So
what I will suggest is it will be open for anybody to raise a motion arising if they want to explore an alternative after we've dealt with this, however it lands. You could definitely bring that, or anybody could bring that if they're dealing with alternatives. We won't deal with the alternatives as putting them into the bylaw. It would be a separate thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor McCallum.
Thank you. And I appreciate the way you've brought this conversation around, Councillor Faubert. We're going to make a bit of sausage, I think, today in public. So I have the same feelings. I feel like that New Year's Eve fireworks, low level, that's a given, or low noise, or however you want to refer to it, has become something that people culturally expect in Canmore. And I think we've gotten used to, again, as you have pointed out, Canada Day not occurring. As an aside, I've seen the outdoor projection. That stuff is fantastic. They did it on Parliament Hill in Ottawa, and it was an entire story. It was like a 25-minute show, and that's a budget, man. And that's also a big building, although it's a big mountain. Yeah. Anyways, it was telling the story of Canada through this, and it was blew my head right off my shoulders. So that, I think, would be an interesting thing to look at, as well as the other options. They're all interesting, visually stimulating options, definitely. I guess what I don't want to see is, I want to see all the power of the town of Canmore being able to permit or not permit fireworks being left in their hands, and that the town, leaving the town the ability to actually continue to set off fireworks. And firework technology is changing. It's changing, much like vehicle technology, like all of it. So, in 10 years, we might be like, this actually has not got the impact that it had. Or maybe we've moved on to something different. Who knows? But I think I struggle with the fact that we're closing ourselves off, the town-sanctioned shows off completely with this bylaw. And that's not to say that I don't think that we should have a show this winter. I think it should be an annual budget decision as we go through our 1 to 3 year budgeting process. I think it's something that we should project forward and decide what kind of art we want to display on New Year's Eve. Whether that's a laser show, whether that's a pyro show, whether that's no show. And so that's what I would like to see occur. Because if any of these other options we decide, we're probably going to have to, in at least 2 of them, bring a bylaw forward to permit those to happen as well. So that's sort of, again, my messy thoughts.
So just for clarity then, because of the way we do budgeting, it would be for the year following, right? So if
So
we're
we have
in
a
the
budget
fall-
this year,
in this year,
10,000.
and we already have it approved for this
Yeah.
this December 31st.
Yeah.
We'd be talking about the following one, deciding.
Moving forward, what that looks like. And you're going to need, like, when you see the show that was in Ottawa, there was no way that was done in 6 months. There's no way.
No, it was
right?
it's a fantastic
It
show.
is, it is.
Highly
So,
recommend.
and it's something that is recyclable. So anyways, I just,
We could just have them bring it here and put it on the mountain. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, I know, to carve out a, anyways, it's, and so I'm just trying to think if I had any other notes. Yeah, I'd like to see a transition. I think that if we're hanging our hat on noise, there's a lot of other noisy things that we still let happen. And so I'm struggling to hang my hat on noise, to be perfectly honest, from low level.
Just on noise, there's more than decibel level, though. It's also about range and carry, you know, that you have. where
But they
you can
also,
hear it.
low level, don't have the boom. And that is actually what is harmful, is that those booms.
My dog would think otherwise, but
Anyways,
your point taken.
Yep, for
Councillor-
sure.
Councillor Graham.
It feels like we're in like a debate mode here.
We are in a debate.
Yeah.
There's a motion on the table.
Okay, well,
That's exactly what we're in.
then perfect. When you know better, you should do better. And consistency matters. I think one of the reasons we saw rogue fireworks last year was the fact that the town was doing them. And that kind of implicitly says, I can do them too. You might not be from around here, but some fireworks are going off, therefore fireworks are okay. I like fireworks. I really like fireworks. I like watching them. I was on a beach in Costa Rica. Some friends of mine were getting married. And I was sitting beside this gentleman that I'd gotten to know throughout the week of this destination wedding. Nice guy. And the wedding concludes and the fireworks start going off on the beach. And this gentleman gets up and in a panic runs down the beach. Not in any sort of, I'm going for an exercise run, in a complete PTSD panic. And his wife says to me, he was a war vet. And he has that reaction every time fireworks come up. Now, I'm not saying that that's everybody's reaction, but it's definitely some people's reaction. Neurodiverse people have sensitive reactions to loud noises in the sky. Our pets have reactions to fireworks, and our wildlife certainly has reactions to fireworks. Our fire risk is significant. It's our #1 risk in this valley. So while I like fireworks, I'm willing to explore other alternatives that see us do better. I think this is one of those opportunities. I'm not opposed to Councillor Faubert's idea of transitioning. I think that the community expects something. But I'm also willing to just say that we know better and we should do better. Thanks.
Thank you. Looking to see if anyone else wishes to speak to the motion at this time. I very much echo Councillor Graham's thoughts. I do love fireworks as well. But we have to put what is the needs of the community and the best interest of the community ahead of our personal likes. I think we're all pretty much agreement from what I've heard so far that the potential wildfire risk element from, especially from the Canada Day potential fireworks is something that nobody really supports. It's a question of whether we have the potential of fireworks at New Year's. I also support, exploring an alternative. Councillor McCallum brought up an excellent example of the projection that can be done that I've seen also in Ottawa. And that's something to consider for the future. I do know that different noises have different impacts. I can tell you, my pet does not, I assume that there's people other than on my block that use leaf blowers. My pet does not react to any except for the ones that are happening on my block. So if they're happening anywhere else, which I assume they are, my dog can't hear it. My dog can hear fireworks and responds quite negatively. And I assume that I'm not the only one to experience that as well. We have a major strategic goal, and that's being an environmental leader. And in pursuit of that goal, we've taken some bold steps with regards to fruit tree removal. We had already been leaders in how to handle waste and bear-proof bins. This, in my mind, is another step in that direction. We have our neighbors upstream from us that have already gone in this direction for the exact same reasons, both fire and disturbance to wildlife. And so in my mind, this isn't about banning for the sake of banning. I don't think any of us support that. But this is being consistent with our strategic plans, doing better when we know better, and making hard decisions, even when it means changing or canceling something that you personally like. So that's where I'm sitting right now. Councillor Ma, I'm going to have a chance to go to Councillor Ma, then I'll come back to you, Councillor Faubert.
Thank you, Worship. Lots of great points brought by all councillors. I'm right now of the mind that there's a lot of great ways you can have fun. And I think if we were to be consistent year-round and move away from New Year's Eve fireworks, which, I'll be candid, I will miss that if we go that way, because I do enjoy fireworks. But at the same time, I also think if we were to move away for consistency, and I do think there is that impact on wildlife. The winter is a challenging time for wildlife, right? The environment's the most harsh. You might have animals hibernating. The noise is sudden and unexpected. And because of all of those pieces, I also think that, if we were not to have fireworks this year, we could also funnel that budget into a really great New Year's Eve 2025. And I think at some point, making that move, we can start here. And as Councillor McCallum noted, if down the road, fireworks become even more low impact, then it would be really sensible to go back down that road too. So that's where I'm at this point. Thank you.
Councillor Faubert.
Yeah. Oh, I would like to put the alternative on the table as a motion at this point. That council strike out section 4 of bylaw 2024-11 and substitute the following. Section 3 is amended by striking out or July 1st each year. Do we need to take a little break for me to get that prepared, or is it prepared because it was already an alternative?
I think it's right there. Boom.
Okay, good.
Boom. Yeah, so go ahead. So this is an amending motion that's effect is basically to limit the exception to July 1st instead of both, or limit the exception to New Year's Eve as opposed to Canada Day as well. So go ahead.
And I'm putting this forward only for this year, because I believe that we can all get what we want here. I believe that there are alternatives. We can put alternatives in place, and we can still provide our community with a celebration this year. I believe that canceling this year's fireworks and not having an alternative in place puts us at a reputational risk and does not create, it might put at risk the alternative that we create the next year, because we're not, right? I want to build to the future, and by having the low impact fireworks this year is the last year, and communicating with our community that we are transitioning to an alternative form of light-based celebration in 2025. We're preparing our community. We're still having a community celebration that has been an expectation at New Year's. We will create the standardization and the consistency and the steps towards the environmental reputation and changes that I hear my colleagues arguing for. That will, if we can still do that. And I'm not saying that we should have, it's fireworks or no fireworks. What I'm arguing here is that I support the transition away from fireworks, but I support that transition with an alternative in place. And if there's no alternative in place this year, I believe we should still have the low impact fireworks. And in the budget process, which would be a motion arising, because there is one in the staff report, we then, that is taking the direction that towards not having fireworks anymore.
I'm just going to ask, just on a procedural or more of a logistical note, if your intent is just for this year, might I suggest a friendly amendment that it is that Section 3 is amended by inserting 2024 after December 31st, comma, inserting 2025 after January 1st, comma, and I think then this then reads, and we don't need to then go back into the bylaw, it will basically be a portion of that section that is no longer in effect after those dates pass, and then effectively after those dates, it would be that that they're basically not allowed, and that allows a transition period. Would you accept that friendly amendment?
I do. I had considered that as well. I didn't know from a procedural perspective whether that was the right way to kind of frame a policy statement, to have a specific date of after, or if in the future we'd still have to come back and clean up the bylaw. But I think this really does, what your friendly amendment does do is it actually better reflects what it is that I'm thinking.
Okay, Dr. Cotto?
I'm just a little concerned about this because it presumes a budget approval for an alternative.
No, it doesn't. It just says there'll be no fireworks after this date.
I know, but your justification for why you're doing this is because there'll be an alternative, and an alternative hasn't been approved in the budget. So I'm just flagging that as a concern. If we go with this, and I know I'm beginning to see the preview of your budget, So, a lot could happen. And then if what you want to do is go back and reinstate this, we've got to then undo it. Where I think if what you want to do is send a message for a year and see what comes up in the budget, it would be cleaner to come back and make the change after the budget is approved than to come back and undo this if the you see where I'm going? So
I would disagree respectfully, because there's multiple paths forward. There's either there is some budget change and therefore we don't need to come back. So that's the only way that we actually do not have to come back. Every other
Correct.
scenario, you have to come back. So this leaves that open. If somebody would like to extend it further, we could still then come back to it. But going any other route, we would have to come back anyway. So
I agree. And so I guess the argument I'm making is that the justification for this presumes the change will happen. And I don't know. Anyway, I just want to flag that. I also think we should take a break. It might be helpful to just
we are mid-motion
right.
here.
Yeah.
We are mid-motion, so let me take that under advisement. I do want to actually.
I think we could take a break for the motion, just to, I want to make sure we have it
I
right.
just want to make sure we're not cutting off Councillor Faubert mid-thought.
I think there are multiple pathways to kind of get to similar the outcomes, and this is kind of the beauty of what we do, I believe, the sausage making.
Which is okay.
Different ways to make different sausage.
And there is a risk if moving forward with this motion is approved and then budgets aren't approved, that the risk is that this is the end of fireworks. But I'm actually, like, I think that that's okay. Because what I'm hearing is that we want to move to, I'm respecting that this is the direction. But I think it would be worthwhile to continue to have them this 1 year, even if we don't find an alternative in the future years. And then, because the budget process would happen before the fireworks. So we would be able to, at New Year's Eve this year, communicate with our community around the future of that event, what that might look like. And that might, whether it's the last year, whether that's it, and we've made that choice, and because of these reasons, and and we champion that, or this is the last year, and next year we're going to do this instead. Either way, I am okay with those two futures.
Okay, thank you. I did hear a need expressed for a break. I do want to, we are mid-motion here with the amending motion. I want to look to council to see if there's anyone that strongly disagrees with us taking a break at this time. Okay, so when we come back, we will then continue debate on the amending motion that is on the screen, and we will take a 15-minute break then, returning at 11:53 or 10:53. That was all. Councillor Faubert, when in the break, a short discussion with the clerk suggested that an additional friendly amendment, if you'll accept it, is what's in red there, just to make the remaining sentence read grammatically correct. And that's inserting an and removing a comma, essentially. So do you accept that as a friendly amendment?
I accept, and I wanted to let you know that I hit my button. So I may have messed up the system again already.
No, that's fine. Okay, so now we have an amending motion on the table to first reading, and Councillor Ma, I'm going with the list that's here. Did you still want to? Okay, tell you what, I'm going to clear the queue and then ask if anyone would like to speak to the amending motion. Councillor Hillstead, wondering where you're at.
Sure. I can support this amending motion. I'm somewhat, I was kind of fine with going either direction. I think no matter what kind of thing we put on, there's always a risk to something. Laser light shows, there's still a risk of fire because it's a laser. There's risk of blindness. There's risk of lots of things if things go wrong. Generally, they're done by professionals. Things don't go wrong. Same with fireworks shows. They generally, when they're done by professionals, they don't go wrong. They can, but they don't generally. It's more the rogue fireworks that people tend to have issues with, and things tend to go wrong there. And again, with drone shows, same kind of thing. Like, you know, when it comes to noise and stuff, there's a reason that drones are allowed in the national park, because it disturbs wildlife. So when we were trying to say that, you know, trying to do things that to not disturb wildlife, well, drone shows will definitely still disturb wildlife. It may be more localized, but it still will. Fireworks, yes, they have that more of an echo that can go across, and so they will disturb wildlife. So really, we're in a tough place because almost no matter what we do, there's going to be some element of risk involved. Something, somebody's going to not be happy with whichever way we go with this. So I can support this this amendment. I think, you know, it is good to look at other things. I would love if fireworks, you know, stayed. Not just because I know many in the community really do enjoy the fireworks. I think it does bring people together. It is something that is accessible to most, because a lot of times you can find a place close by to go and view them. You don't necessarily have to go to wherever they're being shot off. You can find different lookout spots in town. So from accessibility wise, I think that fireworks are probably the most accessible out of any type of celebration that we would do. Doing a laser light show, as cool as it would be to, you know, put that up on like Hauling or something, I feel like the actual logistics of that, and just the fact that lasers can cause flash blindness, I don't think that'd be great for the wildlife up on Hauling. There's going to be birds, there's going to be whatever up there, and you're shining lasers at them. Probably not great. So, you know, if we can find a building, that would probably be the best thing, because again, you can have better control over limiting some of those risks. So I'm happy to support this motion. Again, I look forward to seeing what other options might be out there. And yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Graham.
I have a question for administration. We are 6 3/4 of a month out from this year's New Year's Eve. Is there any options that are viable for this year? No.
So I'm seeing heads shaking to the negative, and I believe that that was also stated that there would need to be more time.
Yeah, it was close. I knew it was close. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak to this amending motion? Councillor McCallum.
I can live with this. I would have preferred to have seen the town continue to retain control over the ability to determine whether they were going to have pyro or not. But I can have some of what I want or none of what I want. I choose some And I think this does an excellent job of signaling to the community that there is a change, visitors and residents alike, that there's a change coming forward. What the change looks like will depend on how we vote during the budget. Because we will be either changing to something or we will be changing to nothing.
Or somebody could bring it forth again.
You mean fireworks?
Yeah.
I guess so. I don't see a real massive appetite. I think it would end up being 3-4, 4-3, either way.
Yeah.
And, but I agree with Councillor Hillstad that any of those other options will also have impacts equal to, if not more, than low-level fireworks. And so I guess it will depend in the future how pure we are and how much research we do as well. So I will support this amendment. Thank you.
And speaking to the amendment, I also am of the same mind as you. You can have some or all, and I think that this is a path forward that gives opportunity for transition. Would anybody else like to speak to this amending motion? Councillor Graham, then Councillor Ma. Councillor Graham.
We're making sausage here today, aren't we? Which is great. Good debate by everybody. I'm going to come back to my point that what is good for the goose is good for the gander, as I heard a little earlier this morning. If we are setting off fireworks, we are going to see other people setting off fireworks. Allowing these now does not lead by example. Yeah, it's just one more year. It does allow for a transition. But we are trying to be leaders in this space. And yeah, they're hard decisions to make sometimes. But just one more year, is it really worth just one more year? I don't know that it is. So while I appreciate the intent and the good discussion, I'm sticking to my guns on this one. Thanks.
Okay, so one thing I just want to add at this point for consideration is I'm seeing the writing on the wall. I'm seeing a split council. I'm seeing that if this is defeated, likely the whole thing will be defeated, in which case we lose an amendment that raises a fine, $5,000. We lose the prohibition of sales, and we will have the status quo that they're allowed on both Canada Day and New Year's going forward, because I see it being a 3-3. And that's why I am recognizing, as Councillor McCallum spoke, you have to recognize the reality of the situation.
I'm seeing the 4-2.
On the amendment, he's talking about
Oh, on the main.
Yeah, no, yeah, on the main, if this doesn't go, I'm seeing a tie, based on what I've heard. Could be wrong. All right, Councillor Ma.
Thanks, Your Worship. And yeah, great debate brought forth by everyone. I appreciate the motion and the intent behind it brought by Councillor Faubert. I'm probably going to stick with the original. I feel part of this too is we're kind of stuck on this framework that we need to have something that is of a similar paradigm of what fireworks is, where it's got to be some big outdoor thing. But I've seen some of the best events that we've put on, such as Connect Downtown Canmore. That was not like a big outdoor thing. That was an indoor thing, and that was actually one of the best experiences that I've had. So I do feel there is a potential to have a great community event, and it does not have to be tied to this metric or standard. It has to be some outdoor show. So that's where I'm at.
I agree, and that could be part of the transition discussion, but it would be not for this year. Anyone else wishing to speak to the amending motion? Okay, I'll call the question on the amending motion. Those in favor? Those opposed? The amending motion is carried with Councillors Graham and Ma opposed. So now we are back to the main motion as amended. And Councillor Graham, did you have an amendment that you wanted to put forth?
It depends on timing.
Oh, sorry.
So section 5.1B allows the fire chief to...
You're talking about the fire bylaw.
Of the fire bylaw, yes, thank you. Allows the fire chief to issue a permit for the town. Now, should we allow fireworks in the next little bit here? I believe we're going to still need a permit. Is that correct? The town will need to issue a permit to itself. So in that case, we need this point. If we are to not allow fireworks the next little bit here, we'll need to remove this point. So I guess it's about timing of what goes.
Okay. So no amendment at this point?
Not at this point in time.
Not based on what is approved. Okay. Then we're back to the main motion as amended. Would anyone like to speak to that motion? Councillor Faubert?
I speaking in favor of the amended, or the motion in front of us, and which I scrolled right past while I was talking. It's first reading.
Now it's first reading is the motion.
First reading to fireworks ban and fire bylaw amendment 2024-11.
With the only amendments
community
having
safety.
been made is an increase to the fine for contravening the fire ban, moving to $5,000, and a change to the section that allows fireworks, the only exception being this coming New Year's Eve.
And then, so in my argument in favor is just I want to recognize that I believe that the New Year's Eve fireworks is more than just a gathering. I think that at that time of year, using light and brightness and open spaces and getting people outdoors, even though it's cold, is part of the benefit of that cultural event to our community and to us as individuals. I myself do experience seasonal affectiveness disorder, and the Christmas lights and New Year's and that type of environment helps me personally. So I think that I agree with Councillor Ma, you know, that we don't necessarily need that type of thing, but for me, the light aspect of it is directly connected to New Year's Eve. And then when it comes to Councillor Graham's argument, I forgot what he said already. I'm so sorry. I wrote it down, but what is it? No, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's not a burn. I just really wanted to make sure I addressed a couple things, and instead I have said something inappropriate, and I apologize.
No, it was, no, you did not. It was just, you had forgotten. That's all right.
I'm struggling with short-term memory things right now.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Yes. I'm going to speak in favor of this motion. I see it as honoring an approval that we've already made in the budget for this year, and activities that may have already been started to put in place. I think it's a good compromise, and it gives us time for transition. While Ideally, I would have preferred not. I also see that there's some positives that come through these changes that have been recommended by administration, including the prohibition of sales, the amendments that we made with regards to the fine, and I would hate for those to be lost and us be at a status quo because we have a tie. So I'm prepared to support this. Councillor Hillstead.
Thank you. I will also support this. One thing going back to Councillor Graham's points, I don't agree with the rogue fireworks statement that because the town's doing it, people will feel it's okay to do. I think a lot of those people are just doing it because they want to shoot off some fireworks. Whether the town puts on a fireworks show or not, they're going to do it. I think actually, in my mind, I think it'll actually go the opposite way. Once we've eliminated fireworks, I think we'll actually see an increase in rogue fireworks for a time because people will be like, well, town's not doing it, so I'm going to do it myself. And, whether they'll want to risk the fine or not is up to them, but I think that one could go either way. So just, that's my pushback on that comment, just because I personally think that the exact opposite will happen of what you've put out. I think that once we get rid of fireworks, we're going to actually see an increase in rogue fireworks, unfortunately. So, but I will support this bylaw as it is currently put forward.
Thank you. Councillor Mah.
Thank you, Worship. I will reluctantly support because I think there's some good things in this, for sure. I don't want to lose those pieces. I also think it'd be great for the community to put their mind towards, hey, for 2025 New Year's Eve, contemplate other ways that you would like to celebrate, because I think the current framework, such as light show, drone show, fireworks, we can find a better way. So thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried with Councillor Graham opposed. I'll now move that Council gives second reading to Fireworks Ban and Fire Bylaw Amendment 2024-11 Community Safety. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried with Councillor Graham opposed. I'll move that Council give leave for third reading of Fireworks Ban and Fire Bylaw Amendment 2024-11 Community Safety. Call the question. All those in favor? Okay. And that's carried. That's carried. That's carried. That's carried unanimously. And I'll move that Council give third reading to Fireworks Ban and Fire Bylaw Amendment 2024-11 Community Safety. I'm going to just say that I really appreciate this debate, and it would be a mistake to say it is only about fireworks. This is about a continuing conversation in our community around safety, which is paramount in our minds, especially this time of year, since wildfire is our #1 risk. And it's also about our strategic plans and how we best move forward to them. It's also an example of having a good debate and finding ways forward that we can achieve some things and not necessarily have a deadlock. So I appreciate this discussion for all of those reasons. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried with Councillor Graham opposed. We'll now move to item G3. Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Faubert, you had a motion arising. Right, sorry.
I do, and I did email it to the shared municipal clerk.
Okay. Thanks for speaking up because I had forgotten about that.
I gave you a little, oh.
Yeah. Here it comes.
The motion option in the agenda had the lantern performance art / indoor curated light experience / outdoor projection mapping in brackets. And I chose to go with increased cultural programming because that was the general term for all three in the section. And I chose both Canada Day and New Year's because we're looking for some options. And I think that budget's the right time to have those conversations.
Great, thank you. I can support this motion. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Calling the question, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll move to item G3, Community Standards Bylaw Amendment 2024-15, Human-Wildlife Coexistence Recommendations. Mr. Burt, welcome to Council.
Good morning. Why 3 minutes? That's how long it takes to reboot. Oh, okay. It takes 3 minutes.
So, Mr. Burt, should we just take a break for a few minutes then, or did you want to go before the presentation?
No, we'll take a 3 minute.
Okay, let's just break for a few minutes then while the screen is rebooting.
I also can't put up the break spot, so.
That's fine. I'll turn off the Okay, so we're back from our little pause there. We had a technical issue, and so we're continuing with item G3. Mr. Burt, the microphone is yours.
Morning, Greg Burt, Supervisor of Municipal Enforcement. It sounds like we've been talking about a lot of sausage making. It's time to get on a strict diet of tofu. So here we go. All right, Community Standards Bylaw Amendment. Reducing wildlife encounters within Canmore's urban footprint is a key objective in reaching one of Council's strategic goals of Canmore being a recognized leader in managing human impact on our environment. Council approved the Human Wildlife Coexistence Implementation and Action Plan earlier this year on March 5th for planning purposes. Two of the amendments in the bylaw before you this morning come from this plan. So here we go. A couple of the recommendations coming out of the plan. Add a section to the Community Standards Bylaw that prohibits any person or property owner permitting a wildlife attractant to be placed, remain in an outdoor location where it attracts wildlife, and increase the fine from $250 to $1,000. And increase the fine amount for Section 57 of the Community Standards Bylaw, which reads, no person shall feed, attempt to feed, or permit the feeding of wildlife, from $250 for first offense, $500 for second, and $1,000 for third, to $1,000 for the first offense. All right. For reference, I'm going to run you through a few sections in the current Community Standards Bylaw that are important when considering the proposed bylaw amendments. So, number one, wildlife attractant means any substance that could reasonably be expected to attract wildlife, including but not limited to fruit, garbage, refuse, food waste, and compost. Dangerous wildlife means species or individual animals that could cause serious bodily injury in the event of an aggressive encounter, including but not limited to bear, elk, cougar, coyote, wolf, or any wildlife species or individual animal deemed dangerous by a peace officer, fish and wildlife officer, or a conservation officer. Fruit means the fleshy, seed-bearing structure of a flowering plant species and includes fruit and berries. In Section 55, currently contained within the bylaw, no person shall permit a wildlife attractant to be placed or remain in an outdoor location where the wildlife attractant is accessible to wildlife. Fine amounts for this are $250 first offense, $500 second offense, $1,000 third and subsequent. Currently contained within the bylaw, important things to consider as we move forward. For reference, in 2023, we issued 12 tickets and 17 warnings for Section 55. All right, so proposed amendments. There we go. Proposed amendments. So add Section 55.1 to the Community Standards Bylaw. So no person or owner shall permit or allow a wildlife attractant to be placed or remain in an outdoor location where it attracts dangerous wildlife. So I just spoke with you about Section 55 of the bylaw. Essentially, fruit trees. Fruit in a tree, Section 55. We encounter that either as a result of a complaint or when we're going out, working with wildlife ambassadors, working with our department, identifying fruit trees, telling people, there's fruit in your tree, $250 fine. However, if dangerous wildlife, generally a bear, is in the tree, same fine amount. So some people may look at that and go, $250, not going to get to it right away. And if we say there's a bear that comes into the tree, still same fine amount. So what I'm suggesting here is that we add an additional section of the bylaw, this is coming out of the plan, is to create an increased fine amount, which is a greater incentive or a greater financial deterrent for property owners to remove their fruit or potentially their tree in a timely manner. More serious offense. We've heard it in the past. Well, it's $250. What happens if a bear gets into the tree? It's still $250. Sometimes, in my world, money talks. All right. Another suggested edit, Section 55 is an editorial edit, so no person adding in or owner. Truly, this is about making it easier for officers to do their job. It's consistent with other bylaws. So again, charging person or owner simply makes it easier. add section 70 to the community standards bylaw. So a couple things, deleting if, minor editorial edit, and then setting the fine amounts across the board for the community standards bylaw to $250 for first offense, $500 for second offense, $1,000 for third and subsequent offenses, with the exception of few fines that go to $1,000. So to highlight, because I know everybody reads the community standards bylaw at night, there are several parts of the bylaw that already have these increasing fine amounts contained within the schedule. So noise, wildlife attractants, graffiti. If approved, this amendment would now include all sections of the bylaw, including activities in residential areas, clearing of sidewalks, property maintenance, human waste, and open doors. And amend Schedule C to align with the points above. So creating the fine amounts for 55.1 and 57 to $1,000 for first offense, $2,500 for second offense, $5,000 for third and subsequent offenses. I suspect the question is going to come up, how many times have we charged someone for feeding wildlife? Best of my recollection, I can't recall any time that we've willingly had someone going out feeding wildlife. Did want to highlight, in 2023, the municipal enforcement team issued 38 tickets and 99 warnings under the entire community standards bylaw. Top 3 sections were fail to remove snow and ice from the sidewalk, so a combination of warnings and tickets, 36. Permit wildlife attractions to be placed to remain accessible to wildlife, I already spoke about that, 29, and then noise. So those are kind of our top 3 offenses in terms of warnings and tickets. Education and enforcement. We work closely with WildSmart. Last committee of the whole meeting, the Keep Wildlife Alive ambassadors were here speaking about the work they did last year, the work we're doing this year. So we meet with them annually. We've already had a meeting developing a plan for door knocks, public education with respect to fruit trees. Here's, it's hard to see, but it's Peace Officer Colin Vandertog, who has the portfolio lead for human-wildlife interactions in the department, out doing some work at the Nordic Center. He's actively involved in that. In terms of additional information, if the bylaw is approved, residents will be provided with information regarding the new section and increased fine amounts. So discussions with Nick at WildSmart was, can we start telling people about this already? No, we can't. Council still needs to approve it, talking about the increased fine amounts if a bear is found in a tree. No financial impacts with the associated amendments. All of the costs and related fines are already contained within the bylaw and the budget. Questions?
Mr. Burt, just to clarify, you'd indicated Schedule C on your presentation, but I believe the bylaw is correct, and it's Schedule A.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yep. Just want to make sure that we had it right. So looking then to council to see if there are any questions. Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Burt, for your presentation. And I will now move that council give first reading to Community Standards Bylaw Amendment 2024-15, Human Wildlife Coexistence. I will be supporting this. I see this as being consistent, and as we learn, or as bylaws are put in place and we see where there's maybe an inconsistency, such as the escalation after first events, or being consistent in our level of seriousness with respect to discouraging wildlife attractants and therefore making them a higher offense for the greater harm. So I'll definitely support these bylaw amendments. Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Councillor Faubert?
Thank you, Your Worship. It didn't blink green.
No, it's because you're the last one. Don't worry.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm going to speak in favor of the changes to the community standards bylaw. I believe that the human-wildlife coexistence implementation and action plan identified a couple of very good changes that we could make to this bylaw to the fine amounts, and to make sure that our peace officers have the ability to write those tickets to the owners of the property. And that's a particular wording change that really can, I think, increase the amount of deterrence as well as accountability for property owners. I'm also in support of the increase, or to the change that sees there, the structure for second, third increasing fine amounts in the areas identified in the staff report. And I think that that type of enforcement structure really helps enable our peace officers to return when something hasn't been rectified and step it up. And I think that that is an excellent tool when it comes to enforcement. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I'll now move that Council give second reading to the Community Standards Bylaw Amendment 2024-15, Human-Wildlife Coexistence. Anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I'll now ask the Council give leave for third reading of Community Standards Bylaw Amendment 2024-15, Human-Wildlife Coexistence. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And I'll move that Council give third reading for Community Standards Bylaw Amendment 2024-15, Human-Wildlife Coexistence. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And we'll now move on to item G4, Traffic and Road Use Bylaw Amendment 2024-16, Quarry Lake Early Parking Fine and Camping in Vehicle. And Mr. Burt, back to you. Here it comes.
All right, traffic and road use bylaw amendments. So on December 5th, 2024, Council approved the 2024 budget amendment, including a peak season rate increase at Quarry Lake. As a reminder, $10 per hour at a 2-hour minimum. Current fine amount, if you fail to register or make payment anywhere within the town of Canmore, $90. Early fine payment option, $45 if paid within 7 days. So, given that the rate has gone up, if someone were to park for longer than 4 hours, i.e. getting into that 5 and 6 hour increment, it would cost them $60 to park. However, if they chose not to pay for parking and we issued them a ticket and then opted for the early fine payment option of $45, it would actually be cheaper to pay for the early fine payment option than it would be to pay for parking. Did want to highlight in 2023, during the peak season, 496 tickets were issued for parking without making payment at Quarry Lake. Interestingly, during peak season at Quarry Lake, the average parking session was 144 minutes, or 2 hours and 24 minutes. Not sure what it will look like this year with the increased rate, with free local transit Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. March 3rd, 2020, Council approved Camping Bylaw 2020-04. So the camping bylaw currently prohibits camping or sleeping in vehicles between the hours of 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. There are signs at every entrance to town indicating no camping, and our main parking lots have these. Wanted to walk you through a little bit of the procedure as to what happens when a community peace officer is out on patrol and they identify someone that they feel is sleeping in the vehicle. First, they would radio in and let dispatch know where they are, description of the vehicle, request a timer, so there's someone that's checking in on them. They would walk up to the vehicle and they would knock on the door or window. Morning, peace officer, need you to wake up, need you to come outside and talk to me. We would have a discussion about, were you camping? Why were you sleeping in your vehicle overnight? Where are you from? What are you doing in town, etc. If they indicate that they had just moved to town and they're working in town, but they can't find a place to live, we'd provide them with information on the Safe Park program. I believe we're up to 28 Safe Park participants already this year. We would provide information about the camping bylaw, and then based on the situation and scenario, we would either issue a warning or we would issue a ticket. It's $100. We live in the world of technicalities, so these tickets need to be served personally under the camping bylaw. We do run into issues, and ran into issues the other day, just when, again, peace officer came up, knocked on the door, identified themselves, and they refused to come out. So we needed to contact the RCMP officer, an RCMP officer. They knock a little bit differently on the window, and quite often they'll come out for them. So, going to bring forward an amendment within the bylaw, so it's another tool to use, both from an efficiency and an effectiveness standpoint. So writing within the bylaw is a section under the traffic and road use bylaw that would allow us to issue those tickets to vehicles. Also, always want to take these opportunities when I'm before council just to provide you some more information. So for the month of June, all community peace officer shifts are starting at 6:30 in the morning. So they are out this morning, they come in, they check voicemails, emails, see if there's anything urgent. If not, they're getting into a vehicle and they're getting out into the community where areas have been pre-identified or we have concerns or complaints about people that are sleeping in their vehicles. Moving into July to September is our summer schedule. So we do a mixture of 6:30 shifts, so 6:30 to 5 p.m. And we also do some evening shifts, so officers starting at 9:30 in the morning and going till 8 o'clock at night. So really providing an additional coverage throughout our schedule. Okay. So I'm proposing that we add section 42.2 of the Traffic and Road Use Bylaw. I'm not going to read that whole one out to you because it's a little bit wordy. Essentially, it's very similar to the section 5 in the camping bylaw. And again, the main difference is the ticket can be issued to the vehicle. $100 fine, same fine amount. For reference, in 2023, 77 tickets and 51 warnings were issued for camping bylaw offenses. There's one of our signs in town: no camping, no overnight stays, including in vehicles. Penalties apply. So these are contained at all of the locations, entry points into town. Okay, jumping back to Quarry Lake. So proposing that we add section 50.1. So no owner or driver of vehicle shall leave the vehicle stopped in the Quarry Lake controlled paid parking zone specified in Schedule C. That's where Schedule C came from. Without registering or making any required payment, or for longer than the period of time which the payment is made. Setting this at a $90 fine. So Schedule A is the fine amount, so that will need to be amended to include this. And then what we did is we came up with a Schedule C, so this will be contained within the bylaw. So just defining those two parking lots. Easiest way to do it. Education and enforcement. So CPOs, community peace officers, and MEOs, municipal enforcement officers, will continue with our consistent education enforcement. These are minor changes. They're primary operational and do not need to be advertised to the public. This is what we do. We're out there first thing in the morning. We're out there doing enforcement at Quarry Lake. Obviously, we run into situations where people ask the question, hey, how much is a ticket? Some people weigh that as to whether they're going to park there or not. We'd be able to tell them it's $90. We're so education focused, especially in our parking program. We've got a full parking team right now. It's amazing. Yeah, really want to give people as much information as possible. Although I'm proposing that we increase the fine amount at Quarry Lake, I really don't see any financial impacts associated with these amendments. That's what I have for you this morning.
Great, thank you, Mr. Burt. Looking to council to see if there are any questions. Councillor Faubert.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Burt. Is $100 high enough? of a deterrent in terms of a price differential?
Price differential
Well,
for
like if
parking or camping?
camping. So like if it was $90 to pay the ticket, or it was $90, or it's $100 versus $90, right?
Sorry, just to provide clarification, so the parking offense is for parking without registering or making payment. So right now, that's the early fine payment, which I'm saying, let's create just a $90 offense at Quarry Lake, where camping is $100. There's no early fine payment, there's no differential. So I'm suggesting that we leave $100, or include a $100 fine in the traffic and road use bylaw, which is consistent with our camping bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Burt. I got a little confused.
I get confused all the time, it's okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can park my camper van on the street. I have an old 85 Westphalia. It's all rusted out. I can sit in my camper van, enjoy my life, but I can't sleep in my camper van on any street in Canmore. I just find that interesting. Why do we care that people sleep in their vehicles?
You passed the bylaw.
Okay. Do we have more camping spots in Canmore than we used to? Say last year or the year before?
Illegal or legal?
Legal. Legal camping spots.
I'd say we have less legal camping spots as a result of the Rundle Mountain Campground on Bow Valley Trail that is turning into condos. So there were some stalls there. And I'm not familiar with the number of camping stalls at Spring Creek.
There was 30.
Oh, there was 30?
Yeah, that was
There's,
last year.
is there any left there anymore? None, yeah.
Okay, so we have less.
We have less.
Wapiti. Looked pretty full when I drove in this morning.
And the spray is closed, I believe, right now.
All right. So we'll just-
Anyways,
Yep.
we have fewer than we had in the past, I guess. We have 28 people in the Safe Park program?
When I looked last week,
Yeah,
28 vehicles.
excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. We have bylaws for people who defecate or urinate in public spaces, right?
Community standards bylaw.
Community
We do.
standards bylaw, yeah. How many instances, how many reports did you say we're getting of people camping in their vehicles overnight?
I didn't report on the number of people, I reported on the number of tickets. So I would have to go back and look at the number of complaints we received.
Okay.
So 2023, we issued 77 tickets, 51 warnings for camping bylaw offenses.
Has administration ever looked at overnight rates in parking, in any parking lots within the town of Canmore?
Not to the best of my knowledge, no. We have?
Dr.
So a
Collin.
full analysis on options for people staying overnight in their vehicles was done when the Safe Park project was initially launched. So yes, it's all been looked at. As soon as the town of Canmore starts taking money, we have responsibilities under various acts for allowing people to sleep somewhere. And so the Safe Park program is designed to specifically address all of our responsibilities around that, including areas for people to use the bathroom and overnight safety. And so all of our constraints, which I cannot speak to off the top of my head, but it has been looked at, and that's why the program was developed as it is, to address all of our responsibilities. And also to be able to manage, like allowing people, all those programs require administration, right? And analysis of impacts. We get a lot of complaints when we don't enforce this. Before the Safe Park program, we got a lot of complaints from residents. There are residents who don't like people sleeping outside their homes. We can all have different opinions about that, but it's a significant area of complaint if we don't manage it. So that's how the Safe Park program came to be.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Cottle.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Burt.
Thank you.
Okay, so I will move that council give first reading to Traffic and Road Use Bylaw Amendment 2024-16, Quarry Lake Early Parking Fine and Camping in Vehicle. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Councillor Graham?
Thank you. I do appreciate the increased fines for Quarry Lake. That makes sense to me. The fine should be more than the parking fees. And I do support not camping up in Quarry Lake. I don't think that's an appropriate space. But I do think that there are potentially other places in town with the lack of camping spaces being provided as of late that we may be able to look at that in the future. And that's obviously budget constraints and those sorts of ideas, but something I was just willing to make a point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. And just for clarity, it's not an increased fine at Quarry Lake, it's removal of the early payment option. Yeah. Anybody else wishing to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I'll now move the council give second reading to Traffic and Road Use Bylaw Amendment 2024-16, Quarry Lake Early Parking Fine and Camping in Vehicle. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I'll now ask the council give leave for third reading of Traffic and Road Use Bylaw Amendment 2024-16, Quarry Lake Early Parking Fine and Camping in Vehicle. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And I'll move that council give third reading of Traffic and Road Use Bylaw Amendment 2024-16, Quarry Lake Early Parking Fine and Camping in Vehicle. Just to speak to the motion, I believe that these are very logical changes to be made, once again, to be consistent with our program and to make them easier to enforce, but also that enhances education around them as well, because it makes it greater certainty for those who may be considering their options. Anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I'll now call upon item G5, Canmore Community Housing Stewart Creek Rise Construction Loan Guarantee Bylaw 2024-12. Ms. Gibbons, welcome to council.
Okay, good morning, members of council. I'm here today regarding the Canmore Community Housing Stewart Creek Rise Construction Loan Guarantee Bylaw 2024-12. Nope. Here we go. Do it this way. The recommendation before council today is that council give second and third reading to this CCH Stewart Creek Rise Construction Loan Guarantee Bylaw. As a reminder, just from first reading, CCH is proceeding with a project at 205 Stewart Creek Rise to develop 18 Vital Homes units. Financing requirements for the project are anticipated to not exceed $9,442,575. To secure the financing, the lender requires a guarantee from the town for up to 35% of the financing. So in this case, that guarantee is $3.375 million. That guarantee will remain in place until the Vital Homes units sell and those funds are repaid to the lending institution, or until July 31st, 2026, whichever is earlier. Just a reminder of the timeline. So today we're at second and third readings, June 4th. During the petition period that just ended, no petitions were received, and then we would have a valid bylaw 30 days after the bylaw has been passed. The guarantee does count against our debt limit, so per the financial statements that were approved, most recently, the town's current debt limit is approximately $102.9 million. The amount of outstanding and currently committed debt stands at $56.6 million, so this guarantee of just under $3.4 million, I've rounded, would take the debt limit used up 3% from 54% up to 57%. So in conclusion, again, our recommendation is that council give second and third reading to Canmore Community Housing Stewart Creek Rise Construction Loan Guarantee Bylaw 2024-12, and at this time I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on it.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbons. And I'll look to council to see if there are any questions. Seeing none, thank you very much. I'll move then that council give second reading to Canmore Community Housing Stewart Creek Rise Construction Loan Guarantee Bylaw 2024-12. Speaking to the motion, this is one of the costs of building homes, but it's also a guarantee so that it really doesn't cost us in the end, provided that everything proceeds as planned. If it doesn't proceed as planned, then we basically would need to step in and we would recoup after homes are sold. So this is in my mind, an interim measure that is needed in order to get those 18 non-market ownership units built. And therefore, we'll support this bylaw. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And I'll move that council give third reading to Canmore Community Housing Stewart Creek Rise Construction Loan Guarantee Bylaw 2024-12. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And we'll move on to new business. It has been just less than an hour since we broke, so I'm intending to push through. If somebody needs a personal needs break, let me know, but otherwise we'll move through. Okay, so H1, scope change for Canmore Recreation Center life cycle maintenance project, and that's CAP 7009. Okay. Okay.
I haven't. Yeah. Only online. I don't think so. No, I did an online one. So.
Mr. Shears, welcome to council.
Thank you.
As I've said to previous presenters that have had limited experience in front of us, we're a pretty friendly group, so just tell us what you got and we'll ask you any questions we may have.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Rob Shears. I'm the facility supervisor at the town of Canmore. I started in the role of the CRC supervisor 4.5 years ago and came in at the tail end of the completion of the major renovations of the life cycle maintenance project. Substantial completion of the project happened in 2019, but several projects were left outstanding, and the COVID-19 pandemic added extra years to the completion of these projects. Some examples of these that have been completed in the last few years is the concrete aprons around the building, eaves trough replacement and drainage improvements, replacement of windows and the roof in the multi-purpose rooms on the main floor. Overall, the project came in under budget and the response from the community has been very positive. And recreation has seen the building use increase with new groups and extra programming being booked in the buildings, arenas and multi-purpose rooms. Okay, thank you. Early in 2024, administration focused on the remaining projects that would improve the life and efficiency of the building. We have worked on getting quotes from contractors and anticipate the costs so that the work can be completed over the summer months, which are the quietest at the CRC, and use the remaining funds in a purposeful manner. With these projects, we intend to proceed with, pending approval from council, and after the contracted measuring work, which has been awarded and completed this summer, there remains $129,000 and the projects are within this budgeted amount. Should any projects exceed the quotes, we would scale back on other projects to ensure no overspending of the budget occurs. This is a great news story. This is a multi-year, multi-million-dollar renovation that occurred in an extremely popular facility which sees over 500,000 users per year and remained open to the public to continue offering recreation services to the facility while the building was renovated. We're pleased that we are at this point in the project and have received accolades from the public and users, and are pleased that we have remained on budget, available to important additional life cycle maintenance work that wasn't originally included in the original scope, but is in alignment with the original project. These items are provided in a report to Council in the RFD, and if not approved today, administration will forward these projects in the upcoming budget since they are needed in the life cycle maintenance initiatives. The scope of work administration is requesting include spray foam insulation, drywall ceiling repairs, rubber Mondo flooring, CO2 gas detector replacement, Thelma Crow snowmelt pit coil, and upgrade to the network switches, totaling $129,000. We would utilize the remaining funds and maximize the value of the CRC LCM project. As such, administration is requesting that Council approve the following recommendation to amend the scope of the CRC LCM Lifecycle Project, CAP 7009, as presented. Thank you for the opportunity to present today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shears, and thank you for your presentation today. I will look now to Council to see if there are any questions. And I see none, so thank you very much.
Perfect.
Obviously, you gave us all the information we needed.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I am going to move that Council direct administration to amend the scope of the CRC Lifecycle Maintenance, LCM, project CAP 7009 as presented. And I would like to pick up on Mr. Shear's theme there, that this is good news. This is a project coming under budget, and a project, I might just add, has really added new life to the Canmore Rec Center. The vitality and the number of activities that are happening at the Rec Center are so much greater than they were before this work was done. And it's a nice building to be inside. It really is, and the upstairs is just phenomenal. So that's good. And now we can do even more work, and so we get more bang for the buck that was already approved. So I will be supporting this. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And you need a, you're okay? Okay, then we will move to our final item, which is H2.
Just to help Mr. Drysdale here, who's still recovering, he's going to present from the side table.
I think that's a fantastic
Got
idea.
hurdles in his way, instead of standing in front of you. So if you can just turn this mic on instead of up front, is that possible?
Yes.
Sorry, I should have thought of that sooner than right this minute, Adam. Thanks, Rob.
Mr. Drydzik, I really appreciate you being here in person with us today as you recover, and absolutely a modified work situation is in order, and so please proceed whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Council, and that defeated my ploy of using the crutches to keep my presentation short. But, I'll try my best. Yeah. I'm here to ask Council to approve a new 2024 capital project for off-site levy bylaw litigation in the amount of $500,000 funded from the General Capital Reserve. On March 5th, 2024, Council passed amendments to the off-site levy bylaw, and since that date, the town has been served with applications for judicial review and an appeal to the Land and Property Rights Tribunal concerning those amendments. So today I'm intending to make a short public presentation following from the written staff report on the budget request. I haven't planned to make a full legal briefing. If council feels need for legal advice to make the decision that we're seeking, then you should go to closed session for that, but it may be unnecessary based on the nature of today's request. So I'm going to give you some background, and then I'm going to return to the staff report. And really, as background, off-site levies are a way for municipalities to recover the costs of new or expanded infrastructure. It could be considered like a type of user pay system. The Municipal Government Act lays out the types of infrastructure that levies can be used for, and it sets principles and criteria and requirements to guide making a bylaw. The bylaw authorizes the levies, and then those levies get charged as conditions of development permits and subdivision approvals. Some of the main points of the 2024 amendments to the off-site levy bylaw were to add a number of water and wastewater projects. So things like reservoirs, water pipelines, pumping stations, upgrades to the treatment plant for wastewater. Some of those infrastructure projects are new. For example, a new water reservoir in Smith Creek, and some of those projects are upgrades to existing infrastructure triggered by new growth. For example, increased capacity to the existing grassy water reservoir and a booster station. The amendments also adopted methodology to allocate costs of these projects between the development industry and the town. And on that matter, the town needs to consider both sides or all sides to that equation. These cost allocations will impact the development industry where they're allocated to new development, but the costs on the town will ultimately fall on sources of public funds. Utility ratepayers, taxpayers, debt, grants if available. Some of those are also user pay systems. Because these changes are to add water and wastewater utilities, the town's share of these costs will ultimately fall on utility ratepayers, which is another form of user pay system. There's base infrastructure rates in the utility rate, regardless of how much water or someone consumes. So if there's under collection of levies on the town's part, then that will ultimately appear on utility bills. What the town's done here in its cost allocations, administration believes is fair and equitable and has regards to the needs of the community as a whole. And that takes me to my report seeking funds. The amounts at stake in these amendments to the levy bylaw greatly outweigh the costs of responding to the legal actions. The bylaw that was amended is from 2020. The off-site levy model that it provided relied on outdated infrastructure requirements and costs. And if we return to the staff report from when these amendments were first brought to council, not making these amendments would have allowed a significant under-collection of levies. If the current pace of growth in Canmore were to continue, then the town would be foregoing approximately $1 to $2 million a year in off-site levies, and the bylaw has a 25-year horizon for collecting levies. Will continue to be updated going forward. The budget we're seeking is for $500,000. That does not fit the legal operations budget. It's an emergent, significant expense of a type that can't be predicted yearly and greatly exceeds our legal operations. This amount is determined based on quotes and estimates for expert legal fees and other types of non-lawyer expert fees that will be required to support an appeal to the Land and Property Rights Tribunal. The judicial review is not directly included in the cost estimate because it's been adjourned to no set date to run the LPRT hearing first. There is a request for some contingency funds because we don't know exactly what legal actions will go ahead and how far they'll go. The same applies if this can be settled or resolved. At this point, it will be necessary to take steps to respond to the LPRT appeal, even if this matter can be resolved without a decision from the tribunal. So it's really not a case where the town wants to litigate. It really follows from those responsibilities to consider and balance the interests of the community as a whole. That's my request, subject to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dradzik. I will turn to council to see if there are any questions. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'll then move that council approve a new 2024 capital project for offsite levy bylaw litigation for $500,000 to be funded from the General Capital Reserve. Of course, we don't choose to be in a situation of having to defend litigation, but we find ourselves in that situation because that happens as the regular course of business. And in this particular case, the amount that is being put in litigation, as Mr. Dradzik said, is far less than what we would forego had we not passed the bylaw. And we need to defend this because this is about protecting the ratepayer. This is about protecting residents from increased costs that they wouldn't have to pay should they be covered through the offsite bylaw levy, or offsite levy bylaw as it was passed. So I will be supporting this motion. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor McCallum.
Yeah, I think this is an important exercise, and I will be in support. I really appreciate you being quite articulate in your words, Your Worship. I think that what has been lost in the discussion around the offsite levy bylaw and the disagreement between the development industry and the town of Canmore is that somebody still has to pay for these things. And it's going to be the taxpayer that's going to have to pay for infrastructure that benefits the developer. And that is what we are trying to ensure doesn't happen. So I think that is, and I've been seeing some comments online, et cetera, over the last couple of months, that's really what's been lost in the discussion, that this isn't extra stuff. This is stuff that still has to be built if development goes forward, but who the stuff benefits and who therefore has to pay for it. So again, I will be voting in favor of the recommended motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I will now move that we adjourn. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone.